The camera pans over the glittering skyline of a bustling metropolis, skyscrapers piercing the clouds, and luxury cars zipping past the city's elite streets. Enter Alex Bradford, a name synonymous with success, charm, and unimaginable wealth. He steps out of his sleek black sports car, his tailored suit hugging his frame like it was made to flaunt his fortune. And it was. To everyone, Alex is a man who has everything. The sharpest mind in the boardroom, the flashiest invitations to elite galas, and the kind of power that turns whispers into roars. But tonight, he's out of his element. His polished shoes click against the cracked pavement of an unfamiliar place. A homeless shelter. It wasn't his idea to be here. His PR team had insisted, claiming a touch of humility could help soften his image in the media. A photo op with the less fortunate, they said. But as Alex stands there, surveying the humble building with faded signs and bustling volunteers, he can't help but feel like an imposter. The scent of disinfectant and cooking wafts through the air, a stark contrast to the perfume and champagne of his usual haunts. He steps inside, his presence commanding yet awkwardly out of place. Volunteers rush around with trays of steaming soup, families huddle at worn tables, and the quiet buzz of survival fills the room. Alex adjusts his cufflinks, suddenly self-conscious, as if his wealth and privilege have become neon signs in this modest haven. And then, his eyes land on her. In the corner of the room, sitting on a cold metal chair, is Emily. The world seems to freeze. Her once vibrant face now carries the weight of exhaustion, her hair tied back in a careless bun, her clothes second-hand and simple. She's cradling a newborn baby wrapped in a tattered blanket, humming softly, completely unaware of the man standing just feet away. Alex's heart lurches. It's her, the woman he once promised forever to, the one who vanished from his life a year ago after their whirlwind 6-month marriage fell apart. He hadn't heard from her since their bitter divorce, hadn't dared to seek her out. And yet, here she was, in a homeless shelter, holding a baby. 1,000 questions flood his mind, but only one stands out. Who is the baby, and why is she here? For the first time in years, Alex Bradford, the man who built his empire on confidence and control, feels completely unmoored. His polished exterior begins to crack as guilt, curiosity, and something far deeper rise within him. Slowly, he takes a step forward, his voice faltering as he clears his throat. Emily? The sound of her name pulls her from her reverie. She looks up, her eyes locking with his, and for a moment, the shelter fades away. Her expression shifts from shock to guardedness, her arms instinctively tightening around the child she holds. Alex, she whispers, the name escaping her lips like a ghost from a painful past. And just like that, the perfect millionaire is thrust into a world he doesn't understand, but one that will change his life forever. What Alex doesn't know is that this chance encounter will challenge everything he thought he valued, his wealth, his image, and his heart. Because what he discovers next will unravel a story of regret, redemption, and a second chance at the life he never realized he wanted. Stay tuned, because this is where their story begins. The room feels heavier now, the bustling sounds of the shelter fading into the background as Alex locks eyes with Emily. The shock of seeing her here, the woman he once loved, hasn't worn off. But it's not just her presence that shakes him. It's the baby in her arms, tiny and fragile, completely unaware of the storm brewing between the two adults. Emily, Alex says again, his voice quieter this time, laced with hesitation. He takes a step closer, his polished shoes clicking softly against the worn tiles. What are you doing here? Emily looks at him, her eyes a mixture of exhaustion and defiance. She adjusts the baby in her arms, as if shielding him from Alex's presence. What am I doing here? She repeats, her voice sharper now. That's rich coming from you. What are you doing here, Alex? This isn't exactly your kind of crowd. Her words sting, but Alex ignores the jab. He's too focused on the baby. His eyes drop to the child, swaddled tightly in a blanket. "Is that your baby?" he asks, his voice faltering slightly. Emily's jaw tightens, her fingers curling protectively around the little one. "His name is Oliver," she says, her tone clipped. "Not that it's any of your business." Alex's chest tightens at her response. The questions swirl in his mind, louder now. How old is the baby? Who's the father? And why is Emily, his Emily, in a place like this? He takes another cautious step forward, lowering his voice. "Emily, I didn't know. Why didn't you tell me?" Her eyes flash with anger, and for the first time, Alex sees the fire in her that he remembers so well. "Tell you?" she snaps, her voice rising just enough to draw a few glances from nearby volunteers. "Why would I tell you, Alex? You made it very clear when you walked away that I didn't matter, that we didn't matter." The words hit him like a punch to the gut. He flinches, unable to argue. She's right, after all. He'd left her, left their marriage, when the weight of his career and their differences became too much to bear. But seeing her now, in this place with a baby in her arms, fills him with a guilt so deep it feels suffocating. "I made mistakes," he admits, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "But this is different, Emily. If I'd known—" She cuts him off with a bitter laugh. "If you'd known—" "What, Alex? You would have swooped in like some hero and fixed everything? That's not how life works. I didn't tell you because I didn't need you, and I still don't." Her words are a dagger to his pride, but Alex doesn't back down. "Emily, let me help. You don't have to do this alone." But Emily's expression hardens, and her tone turns icy. "I'm not your charity case, Alex. I've been doing just fine on my own." The tension between them is palpable now, the air thick with unspoken pain and unresolved history. Alex takes a deep breath, his gaze fixed on her, on Oliver. "Emily, please. I just want to understand. Let me be there for you. For him." But Emily shakes her head, her voice breaking slightly as she replies, "It's too late for that, Alex. You don't get to walk back into my life and act like you care. Not after everything." For a moment, Alex stands there, frozen, unsure of what to say. The confident, composed man who commands boardrooms is now utterly lost, standing before a woman who's built walls so high he doesn't know how to scale them. As Emily turns away, rocking Oliver gently in her arms, Alex feels the weight of his decisions, his mistakes, pressing down on him like never before. He wants to fix this, to fix her, but he knows this isn't a problem money or charm can solve. And for the first time in his life, Alex Bradford realizes that redemption isn't about grand gestures. It's about proving day by day that he's worthy of the second chance he so desperately wants. But for Emily, the question remains, can she trust the man who once broke her heart? The days that follow are a whirlwind for Alex. The man who once stood tall in boardrooms now finds himself kneeling on the shelter's worn floors, sorting donations and serving meals. This world is foreign to him, a stark departure from the luxury penthouses and five-star restaurants he's accustomed to. But it feels right. He begins his mornings at the shelter, arriving quietly, keeping his head low and blending into the rhythm of its daily operations. No cameras, no press, no suits, just Alex, the volunteer. He works alongside the staff and residents, serving food, repairing shelves, and unloading supplies from rickety vans. At first, people eye him skeptically. A millionaire in second-hand clothes? It feels like a mismatch, a man playing a role. But slowly, Alex starts to win them over, not with words, but with actions. Unbeknownst to Emily, Alex uses his connections to anonymously fund new mattresses for the shelter, repair its leaking roof, and stock its pantry with fresh supplies. The staff notices the improvements, But Alex never claims credit. It's not about recognition. It's about proving to himself and to Emily that he's more than the man she remembers. But as Alex quietly builds this new chapter of his life, his mind drifts to the past. Flashbacks flood in, unbidden and vivid, forcing him to confront the man he used to be. He remembers their wedding day, a grand affair fit for royalty, though Emily had insisted on something simpler. Alex, blinded by his ego and his need to impress, ignored her wishes. He thought grandeur would win her over. She smiled through it all, but in hindsight, Alex sees the cracks even in that moment. She'd wanted a partnership, and instead, she'd gotten a showman. He remembers the nights she waited up for him, her art supplies scattered across their dining table as she worked on her gallery dreams. But Alex had been too consumed by his own ambitions to notice. Late-night meetings and endless business trips replaced their dinners, their conversations reduced to fleeting exchanges. And then there were the fights, sharp, bitter arguments where neither truly listened. She'd accused him of treating her like an accessory, of seeing her as something to parade around rather than a partner. He, in turn, had accused her of not understanding his world, his pressures. But the memory that stings the most is the night she walked out. Alex remembers her tear-streaked face, her voice shaking as she told him she couldn't live in his shadow anymore. He hadn't stopped her. He'd let her go, convincing himself that their differences were irreconcilable. But now, standing in this shelter, he realizes how wrong he'd been. Back in the present, Alex's transformation doesn't go unnoticed. The shelter staff begins to see a different side of him, a man willing to get his hands dirty who listens more than he talks. Linda, the shelter coordinator, approaches him one afternoon, her expression curious. "You're not like most of the people who walk through these doors," she says, handing him a box of donated clothes to sort. Alex smiles faintly, shaking his head. "I used to be. I'm trying to change that." Linda studies him for a moment, then nods. "Keep at it. Actions speak louder than words." Her statement lingers in Alex's mind as he returns to his tasks. He knows Linda is right. Words won't win Emily back. Only time, effort, and consistency can do that. Later that evening, Alex stands in the shelter's common room, watching as Emily rocks Oliver to sleep. She hasn't softened toward him, not yet, but she notices the small things. How he interacts with the other residents, how he stays late to clean up, how he doesn't try to force his way into her life. Alex knows it's not enough, not yet, but for the first time, he feels a glimmer of hope. Because while he can't undo the mistakes of the past, he can prove, one day at a time, that he's no longer the man who let her walk away. The cracks in their relationship may run deep, but Alex is determined to rebuild, this time with stronger foundations. Alex has become a steady presence at the shelter, working tirelessly and quietly, proving his commitment. Emily notices his bond with Oliver, the way he gently calms their son with a lullaby, or how his face lights up every time Oliver giggles. Slowly, her walls begin to crack. One evening, she watches Alex soothe a fussy Oliver, whispering softly, "I'm here. I'll always be here." For a fleeting moment, she feels a glimmer of trust. But just as hope begins to bloom, it's shattered. Linda storms into Emily's office with devastating news. The shelter's primary sponsor is pulling their funding. Emily quickly connects the dots and confronts Alex. "Did you call them?" she demands. His guilty silence is answer enough. "I just wanted to help," Alex explains, his voice desperate. "I didn't mean to hurt you." But Emily's anger spills over. "You went behind my back, Alex. You don't fix trust with money or favors." Her words cut deep, leaving Alex alone, guilt-stricken, as Emily walks away with Oliver. The fragile trust they'd begun to rebuild lies broken, and Alex realizes redemption won't come easily, especially when trust has been betrayed once again. The shelter is buzzing with anxiety after the funding announcement, but Alex refuses to let it fail. refuses to let Emily down again. Determined to make things right, he arranges a meeting with Robert Carrington, the sponsor. Sitting across from him in a sleek office, Alex speaks with rare vulnerability. "This shelter isn't just a building," Alex says firmly. "It's a lifeline for families. And I've made mistakes, but I won't let them ruin what Emily has built. Reinstate the funding, or I'll find others who will step in." After tense silence, Robert agrees, albeit reluctantly. Alex has succeeded, but he knows his fight isn't over. That evening, Alex finds Emily in the shelter's garden holding Oliver. She looks up, guarded, as he approaches. "The funding's restored," he says softly. "I fixed it." Emily's face remains unreadable. "That doesn't fix everything, Alex. You betrayed my trust." Alex nods, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I know. I made mistakes, big ones. But I'm not asking for forgiveness overnight. I'm asking for the chance to prove I've changed." Emily looks at him, her heart waging a silent battle. Finally, she speaks, her tone firm but softer now. "I'll give you that chance, Alex, but on my terms. You'll have to show up every day, no shortcuts, no excuses." Relief washes over Alex, but he doesn't celebrate. Instead, he promises, "I will, for you, for Oliver, for us." Though hesitant, Emily feels the faintest spark of hope. They're not fixed, but for the first time, they're moving forward. Together. The journey won't be easy, but with trust and effort, they might just find their way back to each other. This time, for good. The rooftop garden glows under soft fairy lights, the city skyline painting the perfect backdrop for the evening. Emily steps outside, cradling Oliver, surprised to see Alex standing there, nervous but smiling. The space is beautifully transformed, with flowers, candles, and the quiet hum of possibility in the air. "Alex, what's all this?" she asks, her voice cautious yet curious. He takes a deep breath, stepping forward. "Emily, I've spent every day trying to show you that I'm not the man I used to be. You gave me a chance I didn't deserve, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I'll never let you down again." From his pocket, he pulls out a small velvet box and kneels. Emily gasps, her heart pounding as he opens it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. "Emily, will you marry me? Again? Not as the man I was, but as the man I've worked to become. For you. For Oliver. For us." Tears fill her eyes as she looks at the man who has spent months proving himself. This time, there's no hesitation. "Yes," she whispers, her voice trembling. "Yes, Alex." The sound of Oliver's giggles breaks the moment as he reaches for the ring in Alex's hand. They laugh together, their little family finally whole. The story ends with a small, heartfelt wedding in the same rooftop garden, surrounded by the shelter staff and families who have become their community. Emily walks down the aisle, holding Oliver's hand, her eyes fixed on Alex, who waits with a smile full of love and promise. Later, as they sit under the stars watching Oliver dance with the other children, Emily leans her head on Alex's shoulder. "I never thought we'd end up here," she says softly. "Me neither," Alex replies, wrapping his arm around her. "But I wouldn't trade it for anything." With laughter filling the air and love lighting their path, they know this is just the beginning of their new life, a life built on trust, redemption, and hope for the future. Together, they've found their way back to each other, and this time, they're here to stay. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another heartwarming story like this. Thank you for watching.